Hi there. I'm Christine, and this is the Canadian Constitution Foundation Freedom Update. Today, I want to talk to you about the financial chill that the Prime Minister's illegal and unconstitutional invocation of the Emergencies Act has created. We've been getting a ton of questions about this, and I want to tell you a little bit about it. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Christine and I'm the litigation director for the Canadian Constitution Foundation, a legal charity that fights for fundamental freedoms in Canada. I upload regular videos about our ongoing cases, so if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please hit like and subscribe below. It really helps my videos out a lot. And please remember that these videos are for your information purposes only. They are not legal advice. If you have your own legal question or problem, please consult your own lawyer. So I want to talk today about financial chill. As I mentioned during my last video, we're one of the organizations that's challenging the federal government's invocation of the Emergencies Act on the basis that the criteria of the act is not met and that the orders under it are unjustified violations of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You can learn more about that case by visiting the ccf.ca/Emergencies Act. Since announcing that legal challenge, we've been inundated with interest about the case. In fact, we had so much interest on the first day that our website actually crashed because of overwhelming traffic. The public's response to our legal challenge has been overwhelmingly incredibly positive, but there's been a disturbing trend that has emerged. There seems to be a widespread fear that donating to causes that advocate for fundamental freedoms, civil liberties, and challenging government overreach will result in the freezing of bank accounts and seizing of assets. I want to make it clear that donating to the Canadian Constitution Foundation would not result in the seizing or freezing of assets, although I really do understand where this misplaced fear is coming from. The invocation of the Emergencies Act was controversial not just because the criteria of public order emergency wasn't met, but also because of the economic measures that were enacted under the emergencies legislation that requires banks to disclose otherwise private banking information to police and permits the freezing of assets when specific criteria under those measures is met. A donation to the Canadian Constitution Foundation would not meet that criteria. A donation to us would not result in the freezing of assets, but it is creating a significant financial chill, which is creating a big problem for public interest organizations like mine, which are one of the few organizations that's actually positioned to fight back against this kind of overreach. And the overreach is really clear. The measures that were enacted under the federal government's invocation of the Emergencies Act, they're really unprecedented in their scope and impact. Section 5 of the Emergency Measures Regulation states, to quote, "A person must not directly or indirectly use, collect, provide, make available, or invite a person to provide property to facilitate or participate in any assembly for the purposes of benefiting any person who's facilitating or participating in such an activity." As the House of Commons Finance Committee heard, those measures would have allowed for the freezing of bank accounts of those suspected of donating to the protests without a warrant or without a court order. Now, on the plain reading of the regulations, even a $20 donation could have resulted in accounts being frozen. Now, I want to be really clear. I have no legal advice to give anyone who's had their account frozen. If you've had this happen, please consult a lawyer. I also have no advice for anyone who has donated to the Freedom Convoy through GiveSendGo and then had their information leaked in a widely publicized hack. I also want to make it clear that we're not working on anything that's related to that hack of GiveSendGo. Now, I certainly have my own thoughts about it. I think that the widespread publication of that information that was obtained through the hack is unethical, and that people who have had their private information disclosed that way really have my sympathy. There are individuals who donated to the so-called Freedom Convoy cause without any intention of supporting anything illegal, but they wanted to express frustration with ongoing mandates and restrictions in Canada. And frankly, those are frustrations that I myself share. The fact that individuals who donated to that cause and without any intention of supporting anything illegal, have now had their names, full names, and the locations of their homes posted on a Google map is highly disturbing. I think that people who have had this happen to them should consult a lawyer. Now, with respect to the financial measures under the Emergencies Act that allowed banks to disclose otherwise private financial information to police, the Prime Minister has indicated that although the emergency declaration has ended, enforcement that began under those measures will continue. And one of the things that we're doing at the Canadian Constitution Foundation is challenging the constitutionality of those measures in court. Canadians have a right to reasonable expectation of privacy, including over their financial information. And we are arguing in court that these measures to disclose otherwise private financial information, that constitutes a search. And we are arguing that it is an unlawful search. We're not representing any individuals in this case. We are making these arguments as a public interest litigant. And as I said, if you have been impacted by any of the government measures, you should speak to your own lawyer. But I want to address what I brought up at the beginning, the financial chill that public interest organizations like mine, the Canadian Constitution Foundation, are experiencing. These economic measures, the freezing of accounts, has raised a specter through the almost comically vague language in the measures of directly or indirectly supporting illegal assemblies. There's this perception that supporting any actions, even tangentially related to the events of last month, could result in frozen accounts. For example, we at the CCF have received dozens of emails, countless social media posts, tweets and Facebook posts, YouTube comments from concerned individuals who are worried that donating to our legal challenge will result in an arbitrarily frozen bank account with no recourse. For example, our executive director received a text message from a friend of hers. This is a person with a PhD in economics, and he wrote to her saying, "I'd love to donate, but I have a family to support and I can't risk having my account frozen." There is real fear out there among people. And I have to make it clear that this is a misplaced fear. To be clear, even on the broadest possible interpretation of the economic measures under the Emergencies Act, a donation to our legal challenge of the Emergencies Act does not pose any risk at all of law enforcement action. Our challenge and other challenges, there are several others, ones brought by the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, they have no connection to the protesters or their organizers. Our challenge deals with whether the basic statutory requirements of the Emergencies Act were met and with our charter arguments about the measures enacted under the Emergencies Act. We are making arguments about the proper scope of executive authority and the correct interpretation of a piece of legislation that's never been used before in Canadian history. But I can see from all of these questions and comments that we've been receiving that the erosion of our liberties happens not just by outright prohibition, but by the chill created by the perception that the government is willing to take draconian and arbitrary action to silence their opponents. Now the government is wielding scare tactics and overbroad laws to intimidate law-abiding Canadians from supporting causes that they deem worthy. And it's really working far too well because it started to impact organizations like mine. And even though the declaration of the state of emergency has ended in Canada, the damage has already been done to public interest groups like mine, and it's going to be very, very hard to undo. We rely on public donations to do our work. And by creating this financial chill, the Prime Minister is undermining the very organizations that are best positioned to fight back against him. So if you agree with the work that we're doing, please consider making a donation. I want to restate that a donation to the CCF, a registered charity that does public interest civil liberties litigation, will not be subject to the freezing of accounts. And if you do believe that these measures are wrong, we need organizations like the CCF to fight back against them. You can make a donation at theccf.ca/donate, or you can simply share our work if you aren't in a position to make a donation. If you're interested in our case, you can also sign up for our Freedom Updates at the ccf.ca/freedom updates, and you'll receive information as the case progresses. And of course, I'll continue to share updates about the case on this YouTube channel. So if you want to stay updated, please remember to hit like and subscribe below. Okay, I hope that this video answered some of these questions that I've been receiving and that this has provided some good clarification. Thanks for watching, and let's keep fighting for freedom in Canada.